Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. It's truly an honor for us to be here today. I'm Command Sgt. Major John Wayne Troxell. I serve as the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford. I also serve as the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Mattis. And on the panel with me here today are my esteemed colleagues and battle buddies. And I'd like to introduce them right quick. To my immediate right is the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major Ron Green. To the far right, Sergeant Major of the Army, Dan Daly. To my immediate left, the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, Steve Giordano. To his left is the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant Kay Wright. And to our far left is our Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Steve Cantrell. You know, first, let me say first, it's an incredible opportunity for all of us to be here today, all at one time to talk about the backbone of our armed forces, that being our enlisted force. We'd like to address three main topics today. First is personal readiness, individual readiness, which includes the manning, equipping, and training of our force, especially under the budgetary constraints we have today. Personal policies that affect our servicemen and women, and where we are at with enlisted leader development, both now and in the future. From an overall perspective, we can say that our U.S. Armed Forces are always ready to fight and win our nation's wars. But readiness under a resource-constrained environment takes its toll over the years. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen across the total force feel these constraints. If I have one takeaway from my travels and conversations with our troops around the world, it's consistency and predictability, whether that's with pay and entitlements or training and operational deployments, will go along to keeping our morale high. The services here are tasked with the monumental job of manning, training, and equipping the force to perform warfighting, peacekeeping, and humanitarian tasks. I'll let the gentlemen here with me today address their individual services, but suffice it to say our nation depends on our ability to be in the right place at the right time with the right qualities and capacities to protect our nation. And that leads me to the final topic, enlisted leader development. We know that without a doubt, our people are not only our most valuable resource, but they are also our greatest competitive advantage when it comes to fighting and winning our nation's wars. What we do to educate, develop, and empower our enlisted leaders will be the decisive factor in accomplishing the missions our country asks of us. And with that, we'll open it up to your questions. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Major, with some of the things that have come up over the past year, whether it's the Marines United issue or seaworthiness in the Navy with 7th Fleet issues, how much have senior enlisted personnel across the services borne a responsibility for some of these issues, whether they be accidents, training issues, personnel issues? How much of it has fallen on the officers, whereas some of this should have fallen on the shoulders of senior enlisted personnel? And do you think senior enlisted personnel have stepped up to the plate enough on some of these issues?
So I'll start off with that, sir, and then I'll ask my colleagues to answer. First of all, anytime it comes to anything accident-related or something that affects the health or safety of our men and women, all leaders have to be involved, from the deck plate level all the way to the senior level. So we take all of these cases seriously, and leader empowerment and leader engagement is something that we talk about all the time. And Gio, I'd ask you to comment on that if you could.
So if you're not aware, of course, initial accountability was, those things have already been administered. But so that immediate assessment was kind of already done. But we've also just recently established a convening authority. The Vice Chief of Naval Operations established a convening authority to kind of look at that accountability picture holistically, dot the I's, cross the T's, and look at all avenues of responsibility associated with some of those cases.
And I'd ask Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps also to comment.
I mean, to your point, sir, when Joe Neller, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, went before the SASC and testified, about Marines United, you don't normally see the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, with the Commandant or any of us in front of the SASC. But that particular day, I was there with him. And that was for accountability to show the entire Marine Corps and the world that senior enlisted are being held accountable. And I invite that because most of what they were talking about was enlisted business. Leadership is a team. It's a team. And that's the way we show up, not just for the good, but for those things that go wrong as well.
Tara.
Thank you, sir. Excuse my voice, I'm getting over a cold. But over the last few years, as the service chiefs have gone up to the Hill, they have repeatedly warned lawmakers that the amount of risk the forces were taking was increasing. And I wanted to ask, given the accidents, given some of the drops in readiness, are we at the point where the force is breaking? And going into 2018, if kind of going across the board, if each of you could say, what is the thing that worries you the most going into 2018, whether it's the readiness of your rotary aircraft, your ground forces, just give us some specifics of what you worry about into this next year.
So I'll answer first, and then Dan, we'll start with you to go down the line here. Over the past 16 years, because of our high operational tempo, because of unstable budgets and things like that, we haven't been able to get after modernization or maintenance like we would like to. However, having said all of that, there's three absolutes that we believe in. And that's we absolutely still, as a U.S. Armed Force, can defend our homeland and our way of life. We can absolutely meet our alliance commitments and support our partners. And we absolutely have warfighting advantages in every warfighting domain, specifically in the human domain. Back to your question, sir, no other nation in the world empowers and entrusts enlisted leaders like we do. And I think that we can still absolutely do all three of those things. So Dan, we'll go to you about the 2018.
Yes, ma'am. The world is a very complex environment, and the Army is a very busy organization, along with my counterparts that are sitting here today. And to say that we don't assume risk in places would just not be true. We do. We have to manage that, and that's why the service chiefs have made their testimony on the amount of risk that they feel that we are assuming. What I worry about in 2018 is to make sure that we have predictable and consistent funding in order to make sure that our soldiers are resourced appropriately, one, for the threat, and prepare for any emerging threats. We have a simultaneous mission. We have to assure, deter, and possibly defeat our potential allies. So that's probably my biggest worry for 2018.
1 second, sir. Steve, the 2018.
I would say for the Coast Guard anyway, that we are considered one of the 5 armed services. I don't worry as much because have you seen over the last 3 months with the Coast Guard's heavy involvement with hurricane, the 3 hurricanes that we had in the Caribbean, we really, I think, showed up as a small service, degraded our readiness to some degree, but we saved over 12,000 lives, often with equipment that's very old. And this mantra that we've heard about doing more with less, the Coast Guard doesn't buy into that anymore because we shouldn't be doing more with less. We should be, our folks should expect to get the resources they need to do their job that the American public expects them to do. So I don't worry as much. I think our folks are doing very well. The morale is high. We enjoy a very high retention rate in our service, despite all the heavy work that we've done on top of all the other missions that your Coast Guard has to do. So. I think I'll agree with Sergeant Major of the Army. A predictable and consistent budget process will help some of that, but I don't worry that much about it. I think we have a strong enough voice that we'll get that message across loud and clear over the next few months.
And last but not least, Kay Wright.
Yeah, so from the Air Force perspective, I agree with Sergeant Major of the Army that predictable budget is the thing that concerns me the most, making sure that we can continue to invest in research and development. We can continue to pour money into recapping the weapon systems that we have, and also continue our increase in manpower. So we're on a pretty good pace to increase the manpower that we have in areas like maintenance and space and cyber, so that we can continue the things that we do the best from an air power perspective.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if you talk a little bit about recruiting, particularly with the Army. The Army's bringing in more Cat 4 soldiers, those who score the lowest on the aptitude tests. The Army was considering and then rescinded bringing in those with mental illnesses. So I want you all to talk about your challenges with recruiting, particularly with regard to the Army. And are you worried that you're clearly bringing in a lower quality recruit? What impact that's going to have on the force?
Okay, I'll start, and then we'll start down here again and go this way. from a Department of Defense and from a joint perspective, we understand that in order to get the talent we need for the force we need now and in the future, we got to continue to prospect for that talent. And we can't rely solely on processing, meaning that we've got to have men and women that are out there in our recruiting commands that are going out and actively engaging key leaders, key spheres of influence in the community to find the kind of talent we need, especially in specialties like cyber or people that can excel in the nuclear domain or in space. So that's kind of our focus from a DOD and a joint staff perspective. And we'll start down here with the Army and we'll work our way down on each of the services. Go ahead, Dan.
Sir, just one comment back with regards to your statement, sir, with us intending to bring people in with mental or behavioral health issues or concerns. That was never the intent. Everything is done from a waiver process. We meet, and we have met, and we will continue to meet all DOD mandated thresholds for our entry-level soldiers from our Sessions Command. We haven't. Year to year, we get closer or farther away from the DOD standard, but we have always exceeded the DOD standard. And I mean far away from not making it, but we've always exceeded, and we'll continue to do that. Sessions is tough. It's a tough mission.
But you're bringing in more Cat 4, aren't you?
I'd have to go back and look at the numbers.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. As we talked right today, are you talking 2000 previous year
currently.
or
Yeah,
currently?
currently.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to go back and look at the numbers, the number of Cat 4s we have. What we do is we don't look at it from a snapshot in time. We have an annual requirement to make a DOD standard, and our team down at USREC says that they're going to meet or exceed that DOD standard for the year.
From a Marine Corps perspective, sir, we've met our recruiting goals. However, we're looking at, what's happening out in our nation with those we recruit. When you talk about millennials, when you talk about the IGNs, it's really understanding what's going on, outside of the military, outside of DOD, changes that are happening within the culture. Over evolution. It's understanding that and understanding the impact that it has on the service and what type of programs you need to meet those challenges or those changes. That's what we're looking at when you talk about emotional intelligence, the different types of, tests out there to take a look at that. We owe that to the people. We owe that to the public. We owe that to those we recruit to put them in the best situation, to put this building, our nation, in the best situation to win the war. So quality of personnel will always be looked at from not just from their sessions, but also from retention, And then we have a responsibility to return better citizens to the nation. So that quality is being looked at all across the spectrum, sir.
One thing I'll add before I go on to the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, if you look at our recruiting standards and our access and enlistment standards, right now, around 25% of all 18 to 24-year-olds in the United States qualify for military service. So the men and women we're bringing in are the best that society has to offer.
Yeah, we've met recruiting efforts for over 10 years now. We've met our recruiting goals. And that's both in the active component and the reserve component. And the talent across that timeline continues to be better than the people before them. And you can look at the metrics that will attest to that. They come in more capable, better educated than we were when we assessed into the service. And we continue to go at that talent out there in the civilian sector. By all measures, we are a reflection of society. And we all recruit to assess that talent, just like the civilian sector does as well. But we look at, the health of the force through the same external factors that the Sergeant Major talked about in regards to how's the economy doing, how's the employment rate doing out there. And then we also look at the internal factors, that policies and programs that we control as well, too, to continue to ensure that we're assessing that talent.
Okay.
No real recruiting challenges for the Air Force. So recruiting for all of us can be tough at times with the number of people who are, one, eligible to serve, and two, some things that we may not think about, but those who have the propensity and want to serve. And as we compete with colleges and other opportunities, the economy for folks to go and do. But Air Force, we do a pretty good job of recruiting and meeting the goals that we have. And like I mentioned before, we're on a pretty good glide path to increase our manning and meet our requirements.
Steve.
And I'll say the Coast Guard's had very well with our recruiting over the last few years. Even though we've increased a little bit, we continue to make our goals with an effort on investing in these folks as soon as they come into the service. And that's starting, we're thinking when they join our Coast Guard that we're going to keep them for 20 or 30 years. And we start their investment from recruit training all the way through their advancement through their first enlistments, which, by the way, we enjoy about a 90% retention rate at that first enlistment. So good, in fact, and I won't pick on my brothers here, but we get an awful lot of prior service that come in our service, and I would put the challenge out there for my friends up here to find me a United States Coast Guardsman that left the Coast Guard and went to one of their services, and I'll buy them lunch if that happens. But we're doing very well in our folks.
In the Air Force, so.
Except the Air Force, but we're doing well. Yeah.
How concerned are all of you with the spike in aircraft crashes this year?
Go ahead. I'll let the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force.
Yeah. So, I try not to get too concerned about some of these crashes. We try to look at each of them individually and do the in-depth research and analysis about why. Thus far, from an Air Force perspective, haven't seen any real trends that indicate there's an Air Force-wide problem. But we'll continue to take a look at each one of those as they happen from a operational risk management perspective.
Go ahead, Ron.
Some of those crashes are probably focused at the Marine Corps. Like Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force said, I'm concerned with each one of them. But understand we had about 155 Marines die last year, about 20, or this year, last fiscal year in aircraft. Not just the aircraft, but every incident we're concerned with, every one of them. The vehicular accidents, everything. Some things you can't, help, sicknesses and things, disease, those type of situations. But we look at those as well to see if we missed something. What is it that we missed? We fought for 16 years and we're still in the fight, and we're doing very well. We're winning. But understand, 16 years of war, it has consequences. It has consequences. Despite the consequences of fighting, OEF, OIF, and everything we're doing now, we're still winning. We're still winning. So we're going to look at each one of those, not just the aircraft, crashes that we have, but every death that we have in the military, especially in the Marine Corps. I'm speaking from a Corps perspective, but I know each one of us feel this way. We're going to look at each one of them, and we're going to do our best, to put policy, procedure in place if that's what's lacking, training, whatever it is, we're going to get after it.
So I'd just like to finish that one off. So when you look at what we're doing across the world in terms of what we need to do to assure our allies, deter any kind of nation-state or non-state act or aggression, be able to do the lasting defeat of ISIS, and also defend our homeland, that comes at a great cost in terms of deployment. And you look at 196 nations in the world, we're in about 167 of them right now, at about 250,000 troops doing that. So when you put the troops out there like that and the operational tempo goes up, obviously the risk goes up. But what we have to do, and just to echo what the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps said, we have to make sure that we look at every accident and we do an investigation of where we need to get better at and where we don't allow this to happen again. But two, we also have to continue to develop our leaders to not only be able to mitigate risk, but to anticipate and communicate that risk, both up and down the chain as we move forward.
Sergeant Major, aren't you concerned that twice as many U.S. troops have been killed in aviation crashes this year compared to last year?
Absolutely. We're concerned about that. But most importantly, we're concerned about any death we have, whether it's combat related or non-combat related. But here recently, we've had a lot more non-combat related deaths. So we really have to look internally at ourselves with a critical lens to see where we need to get better at in terms of handling risk and getting better at being safe.
A lawmakers on Capitol Hill are saying the U.S. military is in a crisis right now. All these different actions, whether it's on the air, land, or sea. Is the military in crisis right now?
From my perspective, from a joint perspective, I don't think we're in crisis right now. I'll let the individual services answer on that. Dan?
No, I don't see this in a crisis at all. Like I said, we live in a very complex environment. That complex environment is going to create challenges for the military, but we have and we'll continue to overcome each one of those challenges.
And to people looking on the outside looking in, it's sort of like whack-a-mole. If it's not aircraft next year, whatever that high number is, we're going to be talking about it. So whatever that high number is, we're going to get after it. We're going to get after it. It's aircraft this year, but you look at the aircraft, perspective years before. What's happening now, that's exactly what we're studying. Is it, depth to dwell? Is it leader to lead? What exactly it is. We'll get after it as we've done in the past, and we'll make that correction, and we'll still be the most lethal force on the face of this earth.
Go ahead.
I travel the world, and I get out and I have a conversation with a lot of sailors, a lot of family members as well, too. And you can look them all in the eye. And first and foremost, they'll tell you, they love being a United States Navy sailor. I love being a United States Navy sailor. And there's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now. And we ask our sailors to operate across the globe on a number of different platforms. And sometimes tragedy happens. And that's an unfortunate, inherent nature of our business. And but our sailors need to have trust and confidence in their leaders that we'll learn from these things. And we'll go at this stuff. And there'll be some things that we can take care of quickly. There'll be some things that we'll have to look at over the interim. And then there may be some long-term things that we can kind of go after and correct things on. And our sailors know that about our leadership today. And I don't worry about whether sailors are ready to take the fight to the fight. I don't worry about that, because they will, because that's just who we are as U.S. Navy sailors. And that's what our nation asks us to be for them. And we'll keep being those people. But we'll keep learning through these things as well, too. And that's just kind of, I think, how we view things here in the Navy today.
Yeah, just to get to the brunt of your question, I don't believe we're in a crisis. Obviously, in a risk-based business like combat arms, specifically aviation, you'll have some accidents, you'll have incidents. I think the most important thing that all of us, again, take a look at is we put the right amount of resources and energy toward investigating those specific incidents and learning from them and growing from them. I have a high level of confidence in our aviation community from an Air Force perspective, all of our pilots, our instructor pilots, and the programs that we implement to.
After the G-38 crash last week, are those still grounded?
I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I can get back to you.
One quick follow. One of the points that came out in the recent hearings following some of the Navy collisions was the inability for the services to say no when asked to fill a COCOM requirement. And what I am hearing today, and I just want to see if I'm hearing correctly, is that there really is that kind of inability to say no. You will meet what the partners want. You'll meet what the COCOMs want. I've heard you can do all of these things, but there definitely seems to be a consequence. So, is there an inability to say no?
I would have to say that at all levels, commanders manage risk at all levels. And when it comes, when we say, we have to defend our homeland, obviously we're going to get after that mission of defending the homeland, whether that's at sea, in the air, or on the ground, or wherever it's at. But commanders at all levels are charged, and senior enlisted at all levels are charged to manage the risk at their appropriate level and to get after that. So I go back to what I said earlier. I don't think we have a systemic problem in terms of, being unsafe or whatever it is. I just think we have to continue to look at these incidents, and we got to figure out where the problem is and attack it from that angle. So, go ahead.
And if I can say something, ma'am, let me tell you that I can tell you now, we get more requests than we feel. I can tell you that. We do not fill every request for forces that comes out of there. You all just don't get to hear about everything, and that's a good thing. because we're not into giving the enemy any advantages. We don't feel we feel the requests that we think we can do, and the Commandant accepts the amount of risk that he thinks is appropriate. But that conversation between the co-coms, and the service chiefs, that's at their level. And if we're filling a request, it's because we know we can do the job.
And Tara, just to finish out, I've sat in some tank meetings with the chairman, the service chiefs, and the combatant commanders. And when they talk about capabilities and requirements, what they always talk about is the risk to the force and the risk to mission. And then even so much the service chiefs will talk about the risk to the institution. If we continue to do business like this, how will it affect our services in the near future or the long term? Okay, ma'am, you had your hand up back there. And ma'am, I'm coming to you next right here. I'm sorry.
Cornel Abab, Voice of America. Thank you guys for doing this. With all due respect, I'm hearing all of you say that it's not a crisis mode. I'm hearing that we're winning after 16 years of war. I'm hearing that we're not in a crisis, but we have a shortage of 3,000 maintainers. We have sailors that can take the fight, but we've had 4 different investigations that have shown that the sailors were not trained in the basics. They didn't have the basics down. So I'm just kind of wondering, what is your definition of a crisis, and what is your definition of winning? Because from the outside looking in, with all due respect, we're seeing a lot of problems all at once.
Let me hit it first. So I'll tackle the winning piece. So I was just in Raqqa, Syria, about 4 weeks ago. And what I saw over there was our U.S. forces advising partner forces, and we had ISIS on the run. As a matter of fact, I was on the ground for 4 hours, and I could not believe the level of lethality we were putting on ISIS, and they were still holding out. And if you look at where ISIS was in 2014, where they basically had almost all of Iraq under control, and then they started moving into Syria, they were a huge problem in 2014. But with the strategy we have now, where we are building partner capacity, we're training, advising, assisting, and in some cases accompanying our partner forces, we have ISIS on the run in the Middle East. Now, obviously, this is a generational threat that is born out of an ideology, and they're also trying to do things in Africa and Europe and other places. But when you look at the effect we've had on ISIS and how that gets to defending the homeland, that's huge, very huge. And I'll ask any other comments.
I would just say,
yeah, go ahead, Dean.
I was going to say, I think it's all about perspective, right? So you may see the challenges that we have, that we all have as a service, that any organization might have. What you might not see are the thousands and thousands of great things that our service members do on a regular basis, both in combat and from a training perspective, from a humanitarian support. So that's really how at least I can speak for the Air Force, how we see it. The perspective that we take is, while we do have challenges, we've always had challenges, we will likely always have challenges in the future. You balance that against the great things that we do for this nation, and it becomes easy for me to not look at the challenges that we have as a crisis.
When you talk to an airman who's done 13 deployments, that's a tough situation for that guy. When you talk to a Marine who's having to scrounge in a air yard, graveyard, what they call, for parts, that's a crisis for that individual and for that team. So, I mean, is that not very concerning to you guys? And when you talk to an average Afghan who says 16 years of war, when the Taliban is still making some gains in some areas, they wouldn't call that winning. So I'm just wondering, is that not a factor in all of this positivity? Aside from the budget, everything else seems to be going positive based on this briefing. So can you help me understand?
It's a concern, ma'am. It absolutely is. If you're talking about crisis from a numbers, a parts, a budget, I don't think there's ever been, I've been in 34 years. Every day there's a crisis in something. There's a crisis in something. But you walk out and you ask the average Marine, are we in a crisis? I don't think to tell you we're in a crisis. We are concerned about parts. We're addressing that. We are concerned about the budget. We're addressing that. This is not, war is not something, you'll always be in crisis from that perspective. There's just not a day something, suicides, sexual assaults, harassments, safety. 30,000 Marines in and out a year. So in a 4-year term, a 4-year enlistment, 120,000 Marines come and go in the Marine Corps. That's 2/3 of the Marine Corps would turn over. You would say outside, that's a crisis. Because Boeing doesn't do it, Google doesn't do it. 30,000 a year, the average age 25. We bring in 17-year-olds. Crisis? It's like Groundhog Day. But the fact that we're sitting there having freedom of speech, and we're having this conversation, and the people we're fighting against are not, that alone tells me we're winning. We're winning. And I absolutely understand where you're going, because we have to look Gold Star families in the eye when we lose someone. And that's serious. Every one of them are serious. Not only do we have to look them in the eye when we lose the individual, but they return to the Marine Corps and to the services to still sit beside us. That's a constant reminder that we always have to do better by our people. Always doing better by our people. That's why we're so focused in on those things that may not be a crisis outside of the building, but it's definitely a concern of ours. I don't want you to think that we're not concerned about those things.
We're not here to paint a rosy picture and try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, but as leaders of our respective services, we see every challenge as an opportunity for us to invest more, to engage more, to create programs and processes that help that airman who's deployed 13 times and that corporal who can't get the parts and whatnot. So some of the things that you may see as a crisis, we see them as opportunities and subsequent challenges for us to tackle.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say the same thing. Echo some of my peers' evaluations there. Is the first time I ever heard that word is when you said it and I saw it on the news. I haven't had a single soldier tell me in 3 or 4 years that we're in crisis. We have challenges. It's a complex world. We have tragedies. These young men and women need to know that the people in America believe the same thing they do, and that they are out there doing great work for our nation every day. Our allies are assured. Our potential adversaries are deterred, and we will defeat if we have to.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Sergeant Major, can I ask, there's a proposal out of Congress, 2.4% raise, White House 2.1%. Who knows where that comes out in the end? Then you got BAH, commissaries, you don't know what's going to happen. And it all might get wrapped up in another continuing resolution, and here we go again. The troops come to you and they say, hey, Top, am I going to get a raise or what? What are these guys doing? What do you tell them? How does that affect morale?
Well, we tell them exactly what's going on here. We're here in the Beltway and in the Pentagon, and we serve in these high-level meetings with our bosses here, but also on Capitol Hill, so that we can tell the troops exactly what's going on. I can tell you in my travels, as I go around the world, the troops, there are concerns about stuff like dual BAH and things like that, but more importantly to the troops, they want to have great quality of service along with that quality of life, meaning, I want the latest optics I can have on my rifles. I want the latest kind of equipment or technology to get after this emerging unmanned aerial system threat. Very few complaints do I get on pay raises or quality of life kind of issues. It's how can I get better at doing my mission that you're expecting me to accomplish out there. I'll open it up. Go
There are
ahead.
3 types of readiness, sir. Unit, which are services, personal, and family. Now, from a family perspective, I've been in this job almost 3 years. I've never heard a Marine ask about a pay raise. What you will hear Marines and families address is, child development centers, youth sports, exceptional family member programs, those programs that support the family, the Class B programs. It's not that it's a pay raise thing. It's when you say BAH, dual BAH, compensation, absolutely, absolutely. And those things we're absolutely involved in as senior enlisted. Those are the conversations that we have about the budget and how it affects. Talk about continuing resolutions. Getting the budget in the middle of the year, this last fiscal year, having to try to crunch the money. We also go to the Hill as well to talk to Congress about these situations. And those are the things that we address, the quality of life issues that families address with us, as well as our service members, to make sure there's balance, Because I don't care how much lethality we talk about, if we can't keep high quality warriors to fight for this nation, we're not going to win, because they're not going to stay. We enlist the warrior, and for those who have families, we try to retain the family because they have a voice in whether they're going to stay or not. So that conversation, it's absolutely heard and being spoken to.
Ma'am, go ahead.
This is for Sergeant Major Daly. So the Army is looking to get bigger next year. What kind of mix of retention and accessions are you looking at, and what kind of incentives are you mulling on both sides?
And thanks, Megan, for the question. So yeah, we are, and we're happy about getting bigger. And we're glad that our elected leaders are helping us do that. So we think the majority of that's going to come, roughly about 80K as our planning factor for accessions right now. And we did so well last year in our in-service retention program that our in-service retention actually is not that big a significant number because we've already accomplished it for FY18, preponderance of that in FY17. So from an incentive, incentives are based upon the need and requirement by skill level and MOS. So what we won't see is a whole lot, a bigger increase in bonuses unless we specifically need that skill level and MOS. And we'll tune our accessions incentives based upon how we do throughout the year.
Do you see?
Sir, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you see doing 2-year enlistments again, or kind of quality of life bonuses like that rather than just money?
I see that. I think we'll have to base it upon the needs. So far, right now, we're a little bit below glide in accessions, which is not concerning. We're coming just first part of the year. Like I said, retention is doing great. Last year was the best year we had in a decade, and I think we're just going to have to take it quarter by quarter and see where we fall.
Sir, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a personnel policy issue, the transgender guidance. There have been 2 court-ordered injunctions now, but yet the SecDef, I believe, has a January deadline for accessions. So I'm just wondering what you guys are planning at this point. And the second part of the question is, I'm wondering if you're seeing any type of a morale issue, not just among transgender troops, but other troops who see the possibility of their fellow service members being separated based on their gender identity.
So I'll take the first part of the question, then I'll open it up to my colleagues for the second part. So right now, all of us right here serve on a Secretary of Defense directed transgender policy that is chaired by the Deputy Secretary of Defense and the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It includes our undersecretaries and others, but we're part of this panel that is looking to provide guidance to the Secretary on what a transgender service panel or service policy should look like. Right now, we've been at this a couple of months. We have till the end of December to come up with a recommendation that we'll provide to the Secretary then so that he can go forward with implementing the policy. And I'll leave that there. In terms of the morale, I'll let you all open it up to you all.
I have not seen or don't anticipate any morale issues right now, so I think it really depends on how all this plays out. We all have varying numbers of members who might fall into the category of a transgender or someone with gender dysphoria or whatnot, but to this point, from an Air Force perspective, no morale issues.
I'll say from the Coast Guard being the smallest service, absolutely no issues at all. Matter of fact, some of you might have heard our service chief a couple months ago that made a public declaration that he would stand behind all those members in our service that had started their transition under the old guidelines. So I think our workforce appreciates that support. And again, I have not heard and don't expect that we'll have any morale issues in our United States Coast Guard.
Yeah, I'll tell you, most sailors just, occasionally it will come up, and it's just kind of, where are we with the policy? That's it. They just kind of want to know, what are we doing?
So, sir, I'm going to go to you because you got the best looking haircut in the room. And you're giving me some recommendations here in about 3 years when I retire because, I've had this haircut for 35 years.
I've only had this one for 10, so it stays well.
Okay, good. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Scott Moscioni with Federal News Radio. I wanted to ask, the retention and recruitment numbers at this point sound like they're pretty good, but over the next 10 years, there's some signs that are coming. The Blue Star Families survey just came out. 60% of service members say they wouldn't recommend to their children serving. I mean, you can look at your arms. There's a lot of deployments that you're doing. How are you going to change your service in the next 10 years to accommodate future recruitment and retainment issues?
So I'll speak from a joint perspective. First of all, we have to be prepared to fight and win our nation's battles. And with that comes a certain set of standards that we have to have, because we can't predict what our enemy is going to be able to do to us. So in order to maintain warfighting competitive advantages, we have to make sure that we have the most quality people we have to do the job. Now, as you mentioned, and as I described earlier, when 25% of 18 to 25-year-olds don't qualify for military service, either due to not meeting the physical requirements or other issues, and then if you look at where that might be in the year of 2030, that's potentially a huge risk to our country right there. So as we move forward, we have to continue to have recruiting and accessing practices and policies that attract the best talent that we have. But we also have to get beyond what you already talked about. If 1% of our force serves right now, most of their influences in their family hasn't come from their parents. It's come from their grandparents who were in the Vietnam era and things like that. So we have to make sure that we continue to provide practices and policies that attract this talent as it comes in.
And that includes the new blended retirement, credentialing, and other transition benefits that will become a recruiting tool, I believe, in the future. And we probably won't know until this blended retirement system is online for a number of years, whether that's a detriment to keeping folks around, or if they are able to put money in a bank and get tuition assistance and get a college degree and get credentials that will work on the outside, whether that'll keep them in the service. I'm of the belief that folks believe that we invest in them, that they will stay for longer, because the folks at the 10, 12-year mark are the folks that we are heavily invested in, and we want to keep them as career servicemen through their time. But I think the jury's still out on some of that.
Not all young folks who are eligible to serve are necessarily propense. I wasn't that person. I didn't come from a military background and would not have likely joined the military had it not been for certain circumstances. However, I think the greatest tool that we have is offering young men and women in America today the opportunity to do something that they love. And sometimes that's an actual occupation like cyber or being a space operator, and sometimes that's the opportunity to just serve their country and do something bigger and better than themselves. So, I mean, we always look at ways that we can improve our recruitment and retention. We always look at ways that we can make sure that we are, maintaining ties with the evolving, ties of the day. Things like recently we started allowing more tattoos than we had in the past. I mean, that was just something that's just evolution in recruiting. So.
Okay, we'll go. Go ahead, sir. Then we'll go to you next, ma'am.
Steve Losey, Air Force Times. My question is for Chief Wright. I want to ask you about deployments. You and the other Air Force leaders have expressed concern about the pace of deployments. Are you seeing it? Are you seeing the pressure and the pace increase? Are we looking at more airmen going on, say, a 1-to-1 deployment ratio?
No, not specifically. So it really just kind of depends on the career field. So most of our 1-to-1 deployments come from our battlefield airmen, our special forces airmen. But deployments are increasing only because, at least from an Air Force perspective, we're in more places, right? So a lot more deployments to Africa, a lot more deployments on the European EUCOM AOR. So not a huge increase in deployments. Some of them are spread out. We're actually taking a look at some of our 365-day deployments to see if those, if we have the right number of folks deploying for a full year.
So for those airmen, like the battlefield airmen, aside from trying to add more airmen, which I know you're trying to do, aside from the 365, what else are you doing to try to ease the pressure, ease the burden on those airmen who have been deploying the most?
Right. So one of the things that we try to look at is teaming up. We're actually looking at our construct and how we deploy and how we support our combatant commanders. And so we'll continue to take a kind of a comprehensive look at deployments as a whole to make sure that, one, we're meeting the requirements, and two, that we're maintaining the right level of readiness and morale for those folks who frequently deploy.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to go back briefly to the question of whether or not there's a crisis of readiness, because as several other people have mentioned, there's definitely a sense on Capitol Hill that there is, and that's part of the reason that, a large part of the reason that the Armed Services Committee's passed such a large defense authorization bill, one that blows past the budget caps. So I guess two questions on that. If there isn't a crisis, why is there such a, can you give us a justification for why then, why we need to have such a large budget this year? And do you feel like your message, from the senior enlisted perspective, is getting to those leaders on Capitol Hill, your sense that it's a concern but not a crisis?
Okay, I'll take that on first and then I'll pass it on. So, when we talk about crisis, I think about when's the last time we had an externally planned, an externally prepared, an externally executed attack on the United States? Well, it was 9/11. Okay, we've gotten much better at defending our homeland, whether it's through how we share information or what we're doing. It's having an impact on those violent extremists that pose a threat to us. The other thing is when you talk to a man or woman that serves in the United States military, there's things that they have to deal with every day. They may not have the right amount of people by their table of organization and equipment that they should have. They may not have the right amount of equipment to do what they need to do. And they may not have the right conditions set, but every day, whether it's a young staff sergeant airman, a joint terminal attack controller in Syria that I saw in May, that in my opinion, he was the only guy out there with a couple of green berets. He was the air combat commander, if you ask me, because he kept putting lethal, my term, scunion on ISIS that was having a huge effect because of his ability to do the mission and because of his relationship with those remotely piloted aircraft. So we don't look at that as a crisis, and our men and women don't look at that as a crisis. They look at every day I have to manage risk, and I have some things that I'm presented with every day that I have to deal with, and they get after it.
I mean, the world is unstable, right? So there's an increasing demand for air power. There's an increasing demand for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So as the world becomes more unstable around us, then the need for increased readiness, increased weapon systems, will continue to increase. So again, we don't necessarily see that as a crisis inside the military, but we're responding to the threats and the challenges of the world around us.
Sorry, Major.
You look at the globe 16 years ago. We've been fighting non-nation states for the last 16 years. When you look out there, if you look back to 9, 10, and you look at the view of the world and who we were focused on, 16 years later, totally different. Totally different. There's some nation states out there that have absolutely captured our attention. And on top of that, technology today doesn't cost what it did then. When we started this 16-year war, it cost about $3,500 to outfit the basic infantry Marine. Today it costs almost $16,000. $16,000 16 years later. So when you talk about budget, you try to go from where you started in the 16-year war to the war we're going to fight today or tomorrow. Significantly different, costly. We've updated just about every aircraft platform in the Marine Corps. Sunset, the CH-46, V-22 has taken us further, more lethal, capability than ever before in the Marine Corps. And every aircraft rotary wing has got to chase that monster, got to keep up with it, to protect it, to provide it, support. So when you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at the people you bring in, that's got to have the quality, when you talk about technology, to work that equipment. All of that equipment takes a person or people, a group of people. And where we look at, armed forces classification testing, whatever it is, you got to put people behind that cyber, that intel, that electronic warfare in numbers that we've never had to supply before. It's just you look at aviation and you look at infantry from a Marine perspective, aviation, when we started 9/11, is significantly higher in manpower than it was 9/11. Take a look at infantry. Not that infantry's gone down, aviation has come up and other areas of warfare, military occupation specialties for the Marine Corps. So we look 10 years out every year. That's what we're trying to get at. And trying to match budget, trying to match people, to make all that work. It's no one else outside of this building has to do a complex job like that. So I would say don't compare us with any other Google or anybody out there, because over 2 million in the uniform, over 2 million every day in the uniform. In this building alone, 22,000+ just on the DOD umbrella attached to the building, whether they're in the building physically or someplace else. Nobody has that complexity to do. And the fact that we're sitting here enjoying freedom is not free. It's not free. And we fully understand that. So this is why we wanted to address you today, to let you know we care more as much as our bosses and anyone about personnel and readiness. Make no mistake about it, the quality of life, that is our talk.
Okay, we got time for 2 quick ones. I'll go to you, sir, and Christina, we'll finish off with you. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. My question is that U.S. And India, as far as military-to-military relations, they have been growing in the last 20 years. And now, as we enter the new year, where do we go now? As far as we had many exercises, and also India is now facing terrorism across the nation from Pakistan. Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan. Now, still terrorists are still there.
So one of our Secretary of Defense's lines of effort is to assure our allies and meet our alliance commitments, but also attract new partners. So one of the things we're doing globally is we're going to continue to keep these international engagements so we can continue to partner with people on our shared defense, our shared security, and things like that. So I think you're going to see more and more as we move forward in the future, as we continue to get after building this expeditionary force, you're going to see more and more engagements with other countries out there as we look to attract new partners. And Christina, we'll finish off with you.
Great. Thank you so much all for doing this. Secretary Mattis often talks about the military as a model for society, and so I wanted to ask, how do you keep the force strong and united, especially when the country seems so divided right now?
So I'll start off, and then Dan, I'll ask you to comment on that next. So when you look at this table up here, look at that diversity at this table up here, all right? And you look across our military, it is the model of what the United States of America is. And that's where the strength of what we do is built on our diversity, on our ability to learn from each other and to make each other better and to lean on each other in times of distress or in combat or whatever it may be. So, the Secretary talks about this all the time because he wants us to understand that because of who we are, it comes with responsibility, and we have to show the American people what the United States military represents, and it is the United States of America.
Hey, let me just say one thing, and then Dan, I'll let you. A couple of things. One, we're as military members, we're taught from the beginning to be apolitical when it comes to a lot of those issues. Now, that being said, we all have thoughts about various things that happen in this country, that happen in our communities. But I think what to answer your question, what keeps us strong is that almost every service member has values that we rally around. Values that we care deeply about, and those missions and those things that we do together on a regular basis keep us strong and keep us and allow us to be able to compartmentalize our political views and thoughts and values with the values that we share as service members.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would debate the fact that, and I don't believe personally that our country is divided, first of all. I think we're very much united. and our soldiers, how do we keep them united? Because they all live under the same cause. Our job is to do one thing, fight and win our nation's wars when asked to do so. And they have to rely on each other every single day. Are there pockets of civilian life that could probably learn from that? I agree. Is it divided? By no means anywhere. I believe that our nation is divided. But I'm a very positive-based person. And I think that's what I agree with my counterpart, is that we have a set of values by which we live under. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, as long as you meet those standards and want to live by those values, you can be a member of this greatest organization this nation has ever known.
Go ahead, Gio.
Yeah, our Navy understands this. We understand our ships. We understand what the word shipmate means. And we understand what means taking care of yourself is all about. Right? And there's three major moving parts in all those. Right? You're no good to anybody if you don't take care of yourself. So sailors do that. And once you've taken care of yourself, you're going to take care of others. You always think of your shipmates. You think more of others than you think of yourself in many regards. And at the end of the day, we're all going to deploy together on this thing we call a ship. Right? And you can call it an aircraft, you can call it whatever platform you want to call it. We coin it a ship. So you think of shipmate self, centered on the core values of honor, courage, and commitment. That'll keep you focused on everything that matters and keep you united in those efforts. And that's what drives our teams out there. And that's what it's all about. Teams out there doing great things, empowered to be the people that you need us to be out there.
Go ahead, Sergeant.
I'll say one thing. I was going to talk about teams, and it's great you brought that up. Make no mistake. We come from, Black Lives Matter, Confederate flags, Charlottesville, kneeling down on knees. That's where we go on leave. We recruit from those places. We go back on leave in those places. Don't think for 1 second we don't recognize what's going on out there. There are some things, and every life matters. The amazing thing is, and what he means by the model, is that we come from those same places, yet we set aside all of those differences to go forward and be willing to die for the very people that we love, for the nation, the Constitution, and the flag, that we honor. That's the unique thing. We brought in something called spiritual fitness in the Marine Corps. We were challenged by the civilian, some of them out there about, oh, you're talking about God. Well, if you believe in God, yeah, we're talking about that. But we're really talking about the spirit that regardless of where we come from, when the chaplain says, let us pray. I've never been in a formation in 34 years. And even in combat, where a Marine, sailor, anybody under the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor would say, I'm going to request mass because I don't want to be in that formation. We truly understand that that's an opportunity to dedicate ourselves to the soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, National Guardsman, to our left and to our right, to say, if you're down on the battlefield, I'm coming to get you. I'm willing to put my life on the line like a Cal Carpenter, a Corporal Dunham, a Sergeant Dakota Meyer in the last 16 years, and all the others who've earned the Purple Hearts. That's what he means by the model. On 9/12, this nation put everything aside, and we were willing to accept risk by putting ourselves forward. How soon we forget. And if we continue to forget, like Pearl Harbor, like 9/11, another day will come when the enemy will make it a home game for us. And on home games, we lose. We want to play all of our games on somebody else's territory. When the enemy brings it to our territory, we lose. We absolutely lose. And as Joe Dunford would say, we get no credit tomorrow for what we've done today. And we don't want to have to lose, to learn, as the Commandant says. Those are the things, that's what the model's all about. It wasn't about the spiritual fitness, it wasn't about God. It was a spirit that embodies us to go forward and be willing to die for people like yourselves on a daily basis. That's what the motto is.
So if I could close that out, on the worst day of my military career, on 19 July 2007, when my patrol came under attack, and one of my soldiers was killed in action, and another was severely wounded in action, and we were pinned down under fire, and we called for a quick reaction force. I was not worried about what race, what gender, or who the other person was on the other end. I just knew there was an American voice on the other end that said, Sergeant Major, we're coming to get you. And that's the bottom line, and that's why the U.S. Armed Forces is what it is today. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. I'm sorry, sir, we're out of time. Thank you all so much for allowing us to be here today. We hope this is a start of something that we can do more often, because one thing that you're going to find out of all of us, and I think you heard it today, is we focus on our greatest commodity that we have in the U.S. Armed Forces, and that's the men and women that raise their hand and swear an oath to serve in this country and to defend our homeland and way of life. So God bless you all. Thanks again, and we hope to see you all soon. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, sir. Just wanted to say